Hello and welcome to Remove Before Launch. And yes, this is the practical 5-door Mini. Anyway, just crowbar myself out of here. So, in case you don't know, my BMW 135 is currently in the garage basically, and it's third time now, and they wouldn't give me a courtesy car the first 2 times, and finally they said they've managed to find me something. And this is it. Yes. This beauty is a Mini Cooper. Not quite in keeping with what I was used to, but as they say, if life gives you lemons, make a YouTube video.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. I'm a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. I'm a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
So I hadn't had in mind to do a video on a Mini, but I thought, well, I've got one, why not? I've driven a few in the past, but not for quite some time, and they're always classed as the fun car, so I thought we'd have a good, put a bit of a video together. It's not, there's not a lot of information on the car, annoyingly, because it's just obviously a courtesy car, but I have managed to work out it is a Cooper, so it has got a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbo engine, which is actually interesting. It does have a slightly raughty sort of noise to it, but a bit of a strange one. I wouldn't say it's particularly entertaining noise, but that's probably more to do with the exhaust and everything else. But yeah, it's proving interesting. It's a 5-door though, which doesn't do any favours from a design point of view. And this one and the spec and colour and everything else is... So obviously there's a lot of Minis out there that can be a lot nicer. But yeah, it's been interesting. I'm going to give you a proper run through and a bit of a drive on it. It's been... yeah, it's different. I think that's the best way of putting it. It's different. So the boot isn't quite big enough to get a dead body in. So, but actually, there's a bit of room. You can crowbar me in there, so, you know, it's not too bad. It's not great, but, you know, if just a couple of you, yeah, it's okay. Back seats, as you saw earlier, yeah, not really. It's 2 people car, really. Not more than that, or 2 people plus 2 extremely small people. It does have Union Jack lights on the rear. Oh yes, very nice. But that's about it. But yeah, not a lot of other quirks. Apologies for the filth. It's been raining solidly for about 2 days, and I finally managed to get out and get a quick break in the weather. So yeah, it's just dirty constantly. And that's the other problem with being white. Either midges attack, or it's just always dirty. So you got your usual big, giant, bug-eyed front end, which is typical Mini fashion. Lights are really weird actually. So they're pretty bright, but they've got this really weird purple haze that's sort of always at certain, like a centre point in the line. So if anyone can tell me what the hell that is, I'd really like to know, because it's very, very odd indeed. So I'm going to give you a quick run through on the dashboard, which is typical sort of quirky Mini fashion. So you got the usual little Mini steering wheel. It's not too bad. This one's pretty basic though, so it's not leather covered or anything. The instrument, I know on the Cooper S now, I'm pretty sure you get a separate rev counter and stuff, but on this rev counter is pants basically. Yeah, it's alright. The only interesting, when you adjust the steering wheel, the whole thing moves with it, so it's always in vision, which is great. But to be honest with you, it's not great. And this engine's a bit weird the way it drives, so I'm never quite sure. Where if you're in 6th, it's like really long gearing, and then you've got to really work it a bit. Luckily, the gear change is very good. The gear stick, yeah, again, basic. It's all right, very rubbery, but it's a good gear change though, quite slick. You got your nifty start-stop button. Yeah, and all these switch gear, a little bit plasticky, but they're all quite quirky. You know, obviously your control panels. Now this hasn't got sat nav or anything. This is just your standard infotainment system, which is actually okay. To be fair, the stereo is pretty solid on it. I don't know if it's uprated, it doesn't seem to be, but it's pretty solid on it. Then you got your controllers up here, which again, all your lights. Look, you can change the colour of the lights. Yeah, actually, probably better showing you there, although it would be better at night. But yeah, you know, one of those nifty little mini things. But yeah, overall, it's okay. The seats, I've got to say, are pants. Not very comfortable. Well, no, that's wrong. They're comfortable enough. There's no support. So if you are trying to do a bit of a spirited drive, they're pretty poor. So one of Mini's key selling points has always been its drivability. Basically, its fun factor. And the very first ones were always like, you know, award-winning in how much fun they were. And as things have progressed, they've maybe lost that a little bit. So they've got faster, they've got tauter, etc. But I know some reports say they're not quite as pliable, not quite as much fun. But that's it. So let's see how this drives. This, as I said, isn't an S or JCW or anything like this. So it is a standard Cooper. I don't know if they've done anything, but it's got some reasonably low profile tyres. So it's got some 17-inch wheels on 205 45, so relatively decent tyres on them. And yeah, so far it's been quite interesting. So let's take it for a spin. But like I touched on earlier, it's got this strange little 3-cylinder engine note, which is quite quirky. From the inside, doesn't really sound great. It's not setting the world on fire. But again, standard exhaust. So I know, again, once you go up the range, you put some nice sports exhaust on and all the rest of it, you got lots of popping and farting on the overrun and everything else. So yeah, and it's not, at the end of the day, this is a standard spec car. Gear change, really nice and slick. Find that pretty tidy, to be honest with you. In typical small car fashion, so short wheelbase. What I do find, and it's quite a stiff setup, the whole car, it just feels quite tall. And with the short wheelbase, I haven't really driven a car this small for quite some time, but you feel everything. And I'll be honest with you, on some of the B roads, kind of almost seasick if you push it on your passengers, like you're like this. So that was a little bit surprising at just how you do feel pretty much every bump. It's not crashy or feeling like it's out of control. It's just, yeah, you're kind of bouncing a lot. Again, I don't know if that's partly as well, the seats are a little bit flat and springy as well in this, so I'm not sure. I'm just going to cut off because someone's facing the wrong way on the other side of the roundabout, and that's just happened. Yeah, so it's a little bit springy, can be a little bit uncomfortable. If you're just cruising along, it's not too bad, but even there on like an A road, and that's a new, quite smooth A road, you still kind of like that on every bump. So if it's not a completely flat, even surface, it's a little bit bouncy, which I find a bit, yeah, irritating, to be honest, a little bit uncomfortable after a while. And I've already had passengers complaining, so there you go. But that also then translates to quite a nice setup when it comes to, you know, pressing on, threading it down a twisty B road. And that, to be honest, is where it does start to become a little bit more interesting. The steering on it, yeah, it's good. It is good. It's sharp. It's actually caught me on the hop a little bit because it's almost a bit too sharp at some points. But no, now I'm getting used to it and a bit more dialed into it. It's yeah, it's good. It's pretty razor sharp. You can just sort of flick it in, and it's yeah, it's impressive. I do enjoy it, and it has got that slightly go-karty, motorised roller skate sort of feel to it. Now I've been dodging rain all day, basically showers. The last 2 days has just been a nightmare. It's been scorching hot, and now suddenly it's literally peed down all day yesterday, and I'm dodging rain showers today. But the road is soaking again, and then we've had warm weather, so obviously it's slippy. But what I do find is, even though this is 136 brake, if the turbo's spooled up, you've got that torque curve, you're in, it does get, on slippy roads, it can get a little bit understeery, and a little bit slippy. But overall, yeah, it's great. It's just, you have got that flickability, and to be honest, it's been a long time since I've driven a small hot hatch, and it does give me a bit of a hankering for something of this size that you can just throw around. Now, I mean, minis aren't that mini anymore. Obviously, I know that's one of the criticisms, as they get bigger and bigger, and this is the 5-door one. I don't know if it's bigger overall dimension-wise, I haven't looked, but yeah, it does lend itself to a nice size on British B roads, and it does seem to soak it up quite well. Even though it's bouncy, like I said, it's not crashy, it is in control. I do feel it's got, you know where you are, you know where you're placing it. Turning is very, very quick. It's a very quick setup. I can't compare it to an existing one, simply because it's been so long since, or I should say a previous one, simply because it's been so long since I've driven a previous one. Now, engine-wise, it's a bit weird. 6-speed gearbox, obviously, slick change. Rev count, like I said earlier, is bad layout. I don't find it particularly, I don't know, I don't know if everybody's like this, but I quite often drive it by the engine note to an extent, so I kind of can generally know when it's ready to change gear. And this car's a little bit deceptive, because I've looked and realised that I'm in sort of 3rd or 4th, and it could really do with a gear change, but it kind of, I didn't notice until I was looking at the rev range, or the little display that's telling me to change up a gear for efficiency and everything else. But yeah, I don't quite, I don't know. I honestly can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just I need to get to know the car a little bit more, but it just seems like in 6th and whatever, it's very long, and it kind of, there's no oomph, and it's very much like an economy drive, just cruising gear. And some of the other gears, you sort of, you lower down the gearbox, you're sort of going through the gears a bit more frequently. There you go, traction control going off again. I've hardly touched it. So yeah, with the gearbox, I don't know. I don't know if it's the engine, the gearbox not quite gelling. But so far, I've kind of found that I'm never quite getting the right gear for it. So I don't know. And the engine is a little bit strange. So one minute it'll seem quite like on it, and the turbo's there, and it's going, and it's in reasonable, sort of got a reasonable amount of surge to it, and next minute there's sort of, you can note there is some noticeable lag. So it's, yeah, an odd one. I do find that you don't really hang on to the gears for long. It's not that characterful an engine. I assume just it's quite a low state of tune. Yeah, and it's interesting though, because it still carries a fair amount of speed, and that's the other thing that's slightly deceptive about it, is you don't quite realise sometimes how fast you're going. So yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if we get another few days in this, what sort of, if that marries up a bit more, if it's just me or if it's the car. I'd be interested to know anyone else's feedback if they've got this. But yeah, but when you are on it, it's you keep it in the right range. As I said, you don't tend to be redlining it, or I don't. I mean, this is quite a crashy road down here. It's not the best surface, and it's doing all right. It's nice. It's fun. It's I know where I am with the car. Yeah, it is jolting me around a bit, but it does feel stable. It does feel secure, and the car does carry speed quite nicely for what is not the S. So now, brake-wise, they're all right. They're not great. They're not bad. I've got used to them now. They seemed a little bit like virtually zero travel in the pedal. There's a little bit more stopping power in there than I first thought. I kind of almost got caught out the other day as I was first driving it, just because there seemed to be a lack of stopping power, but I realised actually you've just got to stand on the brakes a bit more to get that bit of power. It's sort of, you've got that initial like easing of the brakes, but you do have to stand on it a bit to actually get them to work. When they do work, they work pretty well. I couldn't tell you how good they are from a fading point of view because I'm not pushing on that much. As I said, the weather's been pretty horrific. I've only had the car a couple of days. I'm not doing anything too significant with it, but it's fun. I'm starting to get the whole Mini thing. I was a little bit like, oh, getting a Mini. I was hoping BMW would give me something half decent for a 135, but obviously their view is it's an old 135. Why would it give you anything decent? So they were kind of like, oh, I'm really sorry, I've only got a Mini. But actually, I'm quite enjoying it. You see, there's another blind spot issue. Looking over my corner, it's a bit of a dodgy corner anyway, but that's another blind spot issue. Looking over my left shoulder, blocked that car out completely. So yeah, there's definitely a couple of blind spots I'm not massively keen on, and they're quite glary as well. As in, like, that is a big old blind spot, that pillar there, and that car was just missing from my viewpoint altogether. So you do have to take a second look, or it will catch you out. This is where the Mini tends to shine, and this is the thing, is it's steering, and it's just general composure and control. But that's the thing, I've just gone down into third there, and it's definitely a lack of grunt in this engine, which obviously would be mitigated if you had something like an S, but yeah, there's not that surge you're hoping for, so you sort of think, oh, balance it on the throttle a little bit, pull it around through the corner, and it's not really there. You sort of change it down a cog, just put it to third, thinking, yeah, this will help, and then it just doesn't feel like it's doing anything. But the way its composure, the way it corners, does feel good. It's got a definite fun factor about it, and the steering is good. You know exactly where you are. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, and I kind of miss this in a way. It hasn't, the 135 I love the 135, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't quite got the same directness from a steering perspective as this has. This is that sort of almost go-kart-esque fun factor that you get in a small car like this. So yeah, hats off to Mini for that, which I know has always been one of its strong points, but it is good. It's fun. So I'll give you a bit of an idea on the performance. Going around, this is what I'm saying about these seats. They've got no support, like zero support. They're terrible for holding you. Way too flat, no side support at all. Anyway, so I'm in second, it's picking up now, but I'm now in third, and it's like, and it's slow up the rev range. I mean, it's picking up speed, don't get me wrong, but it's not really alert. It's not kind of firing you off. Now I know it's a lower state of tune, it's 136 brakes, so it's not, but it's still a reasonable amount of power. It's still I'd expect a little bit more. It's just, sixth has literally got foot to the floor and it's doing nothing. It's terrible. Fifth, it's okay. You've really got to go down to fourth to get it to do anything on a fast road. So yeah, it's a little bit, I think obviously it's kind of not trying to play the hot hatch game too much, because that's what the Cooper S is for. So I can't really criticise it too much, because if you wanted something that much oomph, then really you should be taking up a step or two to the other models. So yeah, it's all right, but it's not, the engine, it doesn't set my world on fire, let's put it that way. Also, what I have noticed is quite bad is fuel economy. Now I know it's this age-old thing, isn't it? The small capacity engines, all to do with meeting all the regs and more efficient and everything else. And I do seem to be putting quite a lot of fuel in this car, considering it's not all been thrashing around B roads. You know, there's been a lot of just cruising backwards and forwards to work, and it's saying about 32.5 miles to the gallon on average, but I don't know, I seem to be in the garage forecourt more than I'd expect on a car like this, and not too far removed from my BMW. Now if you think 3 litre twin turbo old tech, I'd expect a bigger difference, let's put it that way. So yeah, not as good as I would have liked. So when you go, oh, I'll go for something small, a little bit of fun, small capacity though, so maybe a bit more fuel efficient and everything else. Yeah, this is no. So that's it, guys. I wasn't expecting to get a Mini. Actually, I've quite enjoyed it. Few criticisms. Brakes could be a little bit stronger, a little bit more power. When you are carrying some speed, you do need to stand on them a bit to get them to really take the speed off. Engine doesn't really do it for me, and the fuel economy is a bit pants. But having said all of that, overall, as just a reasonably basic level Mini, it's been a lot of fun. When you are going down a B road and everything else, it's actually been good fun. Steering's really good, nice gear change. When you got the momentum going, you can actually carry some pretty serious speed through the corners and everything else, and it is nicely balanced. I can't do a comparison against other Minis or older Minis, its predecessors, because I haven't driven them for a very, very long time. So the only way I could do that really would be getting another one or do a back-to-back thing. But it does give me a bit of a hankering for a hot hatch, proper hot hatch. I'd like to try a Cooper S or a JCW, because you can see in this where there is a lot of potential. I like the general layout and everything else. The visibility is a bit suspect. As I said, a couple of blind spots I don't like. The narrow windscreen's a little bit but you got to go for, you're going for slightly quirky when you buy a Mini, so you know there's going to be some compromises somewhere. But overall, yeah, actually, do you know what? I've only had it a few days. It's been faultless so far. It's got some nice tech, sound system, everything else is good. I've really enjoyed it, and just going for a bit of a B-row thrash to put these this video together has actually highlighted a few more strengths of the car. And I think once you got to know it a bit more, it is a lot of fun. And the steering and everything else everything's going to feel a little bit sloppy in comparison, even the BMW, which is pretty good. Definitely not as sharp as this, definitely not quite as much fun. So that does make it a nice little B-road thrasher, and I really would like to try a slightly hotter version. So there you go, guys. Quite pleasantly surprised, you know, for what is a warm hatch. You know, let us know your thoughts. Anyone else got a car like this that can give us any feedback on the engine and what they think to it? But anyway, this has been removed for launch. Thanks very much for watching. Please give us a subscribe, a like, a follow, a comment. It helps build this channel, guys. Thanks very much.